work friends and I were out at our favorite pub last night. Not a really fancy place, but, you know, cheap beer and close enough to home that I didn't have to drive. The night started out normally enough. The four of us cramped into a small table off in the corner, mostly talking shop and shitting on our boss, being that it was the middle of the week and there weren't too many other people around. Maybe 8 or 9 others in the whole place. Everybody just kinda keeping to themselves, the sort of people you'd expect to see in a pub on a Wednesday. Anyway, from where I was sitting, I had a pretty good view of the TV behind the bar. Jesse, the bartender, was kind of lazily flipping through the channels and passed by our local news channel. There was a brief burst of orange and red on the screen, which I registered as a fire happening somewhere, which then disappeared as Jesse switched over to the next channel. Something about the image looked oddly familiar, though. "Hey, Jess, can you switch that back?" I call out to her. The news comes back on, and suddenly I recognize the building in the frame. It's my building, and it's burning. "Holy shit," I say, loudly enough that a few people followed my gaze to the television. "That's my apartment." The crowd in the bar kind of fell quiet, everybody staring up at the screen now. The screen showed a wide shot of the outside of my building. The camera must have been set up on the north end of the block because I recognized a lot of shops on the ground floor. Property management, dry cleaners, convenience mart, etc. The top left corner of the building was aflame. It wasn't a huge fire by any means, but it looked like a few units between the top 4 floors or so had already been engulfed by the flames. "Jesus, man," one of my coworkers says. That sucks." There was an uncomfortable murmur of agreement that passed around the table. I mean, I didn't blame them. I wouldn't know what to say in this situation either. "Yep," I agreed, just as awkwardly. Thankfully, my apartment was only halfway up and located on the west side of the building. I crossed my fingers, hoping my stuff would be okay. The camera cut to a reporter on the scene. He was standing a little further away. Looking at the shops in the background, I could tell he was across the street on the northwest corner of the building. "Firefighters are expected on the scene at any moment," he was saying, "and hopefully they'll be able to contain this horrible inferno before it spreads any further. As I was saying before, it's very fortunate that everyone was able to evacuate the building before things got too bad, or who knows what tragic events may have unfolded." "Wow, he's really laying it on thick," my other coworkers joked. I chuckled a bit. All things considered, at the moment, it didn't really seem all that bad. But then, a few moments later, we heard the reporter speak up again. Hang on," he said. "We're getting some updated information. It seems— hang on one moment while we readjust the camera." The previously locked down camera started to shift, the angle focusing on an area of the building about halfway up the west side. All the lights in the building were out, except for one. I felt a weird creeping sensation as I started counting the windows from the bottom. 5 up, 2 over. That was my place. I swore I had turned that light out, I thought at first. Then I saw it. There was a person standing in my window. The camera was zoomed out too far to make out any features, but it definitely looked like a man, and it was definitely standing in my apartment. I watched petrified as the camera zoomed in closer, the reporter babbling on about the overlooked, ill-fated soul trapped inside the blazing such and such. As the image got closer, I started to make out more details. The person was dancing, or something. I don't really know how else to describe it, but he was moving around a lot, and everything he was doing had this bizarre, rhythmic quality to it. He started waving his arms in the air, back and forth, and then he was waving them up and down at his sides. Then he was banging both fists on the glass, then waving his arms over his head again, back and forth. Everything he was doing was in the exact same tempo. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. He started jumping up and down, waving his arms over his head like he was trying to get someone's attention from a long distance, but everything was to the exact same rhythm, over and over again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. What in the fuck? I said, my voice a hoarse whisper. Then the camera got a little closer, and we could finally make out the person's features. It looked almost exactly like me. It was wearing the exact same clothes that I was wearing then, clothes I had changed into moments before leaving the apartment earlier. Its face looked almost exactly like mine as well, except for its eyes. Its eyes were far too big for a normal person. It had almost this comical look of horror on its face. I don't even know how to describe it. Imagine if someone were pretending to look scared, but as a joke. It would have almost seemed funny if the circumstances were different, but instead it was just extremely unnerving. No one in the bar was talking then. Everyone was fixed on the TV. The person was still swaying and waving around, beating its hands on the glass or jumping in circles. I almost didn't hear the reporter mention the fact that fires had rushed into the building and were now heading for my floor. Oh God, I thought, without really understanding what was happening. Please don't go in there. I stared, transfixed at the screen. From that angle, you could just barely see the top of my front door through the window, not too far behind where this creature was flailing around. It was holding its face in its hands and shaking its head from side to side as if saying no. Suddenly, the door behind it burst open. Presumably the firefighters had entered. The creature stopped moving. For a second, I saw its expression change. The comical look of horror was gone, replaced by a huge smile filled with enormous, pointed teeth. Then, the lights went out. We all just sat there, staring at the screen as the camera slowly zoomed out from the now dark window. No one said anything as we all quietly paid our bill and left. I went directly to my sister's place across town and asked to stay with her. I told her there was a fire at my apartment, and that's it. When I tried to find the footage from the news online later that night, it seemed like they had edited that last part out. I don't know if anyone on here knows what that thing was, but I hope they didn't put out that fire. I hope they let the whole fucking place burn to the ground.